All right, folks. Well, David here from my phone because we didn't want to wait to talk about all the stuff that's been happening in the Apple world, specifically for us keys players over the last several days. So I just thought I would turn on the phone and talk to you about it because there's some really exciting stuff, some really unprecedented stuff. So in this video, we're going to talk about Apple Silicon, the M1 chip, and what it means for us as keys players, whether you're using MainStage or Ableton Live or something else. The new Apple hardware, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the new macOS 11 Big Sur, and what that means for us as keys players. And then lastly, we're going to talk about MainStage 3.5 because that release coincided with the new OS Big Sur. We're going to talk about all this stuff, what it means for us as keys players who already have rigs that rely on this hardware and software. And we're going to talk about the future prospects of what it'll mean to put together a MainStage or an Ableton Live rig with this new hardware and software at the center of it. So before we dive into all of this stuff, if you are a Worship Keys player and you're watching this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Here at Sunday Sounds, our focus is making it simple and easy for anyone to find success for their Worship Keys rig. Whether you're a worship leader or the keys player at your team, we put out new videos all the time to help you find success. And today we're talking about big picture stuff. So first off, leave a comment in the comments of this video and let us know your thoughts and questions about the new OS, the new M1 chip, MainStage 3.5, Logic Pro 10.6, and Ableton Live 11, all in the span of a few days. So let's dive right in here. And the most important thing I want to say up front is please do not update to macOS Big Sur or MainStage 3.5. Just do not do it. Do not do it the first week of this release, please. I've done it here on my second machine. This is the machine that I specifically have for testing betas, for having the most current OS, the most recent OS, specifically so I can test forward towards these things. But if this is your performance machine, if you rely on it for your church, if you rely on it for your production, please, we strongly recommend that you wait a while because you never know what sort of compatibility issues you're going to run into. And I'm not talking about just core audio or MIDI issues inside of Big Sur or in MainStage 3.5. One of the biggest issues that folks run into with these yearly OS updates are hardware compatibility problems, or just the fact that hardware manufacturers aren't always ready to go on launch day of a new OS. For example, I fired up Big Sur here on my computer. Feels great, looks super cool, nice and clean, but my universal audio interface will not work with Big Sur on launch day here or the day after launch, simply because Universal Audio has not yet released updated versions of the software that I need in order to be able to do this. In the same way, in a minute here, I'm going to talk through a little bit of what's new in MainStage 3.5, but the screen recording software that I rely on to do these videos, the audio driver has not yet been updated for Big Sur either. So there's all sorts of these little issues. Last year when OS Catalina was released, it took Korg between 6 and 9 months to actually get all of their drivers and software updated. So if you rely on your machine for your live performances at church, for your production at home, we strongly recommend that you stick with the OS and version of your software that is already working for you. With that being said, if you have a secondary machine, or if you want to set up a partition and update only part of your drive, or if you're comfortable creating a full time machine backup so you can always go back to revert to an older version if you need, then we're going to talk about what this can do for you. We're going to talk about what's new, what I like, things that we might be concerned about, things to look out for, all that sort of stuff. So let's start with the big picture here, because all of this stuff, MainStage, Logic, getting updated, Big Sur, all of this stuff actually stems from Apple's big hardware initiative, which is the move away from third-party hardware powering their computers to built in-house, designed in-house Apple Silicon chips. These are SoCs, which means system on a chip. So in the past, you'd have Intel providing a CPU, you'd have Intel or AMD providing a GPU, you'd have RAM, all of these things being put together inside of your computer, and that's what makes it run. For a long time now, iPhones and iPads have been running on Apple's own proprietary ARM chips, specifically the A series chips. So the iPhone I'm shooting this video on has the new A14 chip in it. And Apple's been pretty upfront for a while that they're moving towards in-house chips for the Mac line as well. And on Tuesday, this is when we got the first look at what that means with the new M1 chip unveiled in several distinct categories of the Mac line. So first off, we have the new Mac Mini running on the M1 chip, starting at only $699 with 8 gigabytes of RAM. And we learned that the M1 chip is an 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU, everything all in one on this chip. The T2 security chip integrated into this. And there's all sorts of really cool stuff that this could mean for us in the long term. But in the short term, it just means everything's condensed together, everything's unified, and we actually have the same exact chip with just minor GPU differences between the new Mac Mini, starting at $699, the new MacBook Air at $999, and then a new 13-inch MacBook Pro available above that in price. Now, the crazy thing is, all three of these have pretty much identical M1 chips in them, and the prospect of running something like MainStage or Ableton Live on a MacBook Air successfully, really for the first time now, actually seems not just possible, but probably practical, probably totally doable. Now, we don't have benchmarks yet officially for what the M1 chip is capable of. And if you don't know what a benchmark is, it's essentially a standardized stress test that pushes a certain part of a computer, a processor, to a certain point and then measures how well it does. This gives you a uniform standard for what any one piece of hardware is capable of across lots of different computers, lots of different pieces of hardware. But there have been leaked benchmarks for the M1 chip in the MacBook Air. And this feels crazy to say, and I will believe it when I see it, but this leaked benchmark purportedly shows the M1 chip in the MacBook Air outperforming the Intel i9 8-core processor inside of the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is the computer I have right here. It costs way more than $999, and if the new MacBook Air is actually able to outperform the 2019 MacBook Pro completely maxed out, it will be an absolute game changer for Worship Keys players. And honestly, if it's anywhere close in performance to this computer, to the 2019 16-inch MacBook Pros with those Intel i9s, it is going to be an absolute game changer, even if it just matches the performance, even if it's just 60 or 70% of the performance. I cannot imagine it not being totally possible to run MainStage, to run Ableton Live on a MacBook Air. And I'm not even talking about the new 13-inch MacBook Pro. I'm not even talking about the probably likely to release in Q1 of next year 16-inch updated MacBook Pro with something like maybe an M1S or something like that. I'm just talking about the MacBook Air at $999 with 8 gigs of RAM. Another $200 gets you another 8 gigs for 16 gigs of RAM. So for $1,200, you could have a brand new Mac computer that it looks like will be totally capable of running a successful and reliable live MainStage or Ableton Live rig. So in the past, we've always said you can get great value in the used market by buying a 2015, 2016 Mac and save a bunch of money, get the best specs. But with this new MacBook Air and MacBook Pro, I'm really curious to see if we're not ending up telling people, you know what, it makes the most sense to go new because these new chips are so powerful. Now, there's a ton of caveats here because the M1 chip is not yet validated. I mean, you can't even buy these computers yet. Well, you can pre-order them and they'll arrive next week as I'm shooting this video on Friday. But nobody has used them in a real performance context yet. And like I said, there's only one leaked benchmark so far for the MacBook Air. So we will see what real world sustained performance looks like. I will say now the Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro have physical cooling via a fan inside of them, and the MacBook Air, the new M1 MacBook Air, does not. But iPhones have been running without thermal cooling, without mechanical cooling for years, and they perform really, really well. Apple is not new to SoCs of this kind. What is new is doing something like this, ARM-based, in a desktop or a laptop form factor. So the M1 chip looks like it could possibly be a game changer, but we just will not know until we see more. So look for the benchmarks when the actual models are available next week, and we will see what it means. But I am really optimistic this will end up being a big game changer. Now, again, it's all unproven and untested yet, so we will just have to wait and see how things shake out. Now, this leads right into the next point of discussion. This is the new macOS 11 titled Big Sur. It's got this really pretty wallpaper that you can see on my second monitor here. Now, Big Sur is a yearly update to the OS, just like we've come to expect from Apple for a long time now, but there's a huge difference under the hood in Big Sur that is focused on the implementation of Apple Silicon. So if you are going to be running Big Sur on one of the new M1 Macs, then you're going to see the OS taking advantage of the fact that the SoC, the M1 chip, has been specifically built for what Apple wants it to do. So theoretically, it's really efficient, it's really lean, it's really low in power draw. It's able to do things really fast and really efficiently. But Big Sur is also available on all of the Intel-based Macs that are supported, most of them going back to 2015, 2014, 2013. MacBook Pros all the way back to late 2013, and different models not quite as far back. But this is a 2019 MacBook Pro, and I've got Big Sur running on it. So it's interesting now because Apple is writing this OS for two different platforms, essentially. You've got the M1-based platform, and then you have the Intel-based platform, which is the huge majority. In fact, every Mac available right now up until next week is still running on Intel hardware. So it'll be interesting to see how Big Sur shakes out. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I know it's really tempting to update to the latest and greatest and most shiny OS, but we strongly recommend that you wait a while. There's always bugs that need to be worked out. Apple has a good track record of correcting those relatively quickly, but they also have a decent track record of launching with one or two glaringly obvious game-breaking bugs, either in the MIDI engine or in the audio engine, sometimes in the way that the computer interfaces those two things together in real time. So it's a good idea. It's a really good idea to be patient. With that being said, over time, I'm pretty excited and optimistic about Big Sur, especially when it comes to running on M1 chips in these new Macs. I am a little interested to see how Apple manages to maintain essentially two different versions of the same OS over time. How committed are they to doing that? Now, this happened once before, a generation ago, when Apple switched from PowerPC infrastructure hardware to Intel. This happened over the course of about 2 years. That transition was made. So I think that's probably what we'll see here over the next year or two. We'll see Apple fully committing to this new way of getting their hardware out into the world. So we'll see how long these older Intel-based computers are going to be supported. But I think it will be a good long while here. I just hope that Apple is able to maintain stable performance for these older machines as they're also investing energy and resources in the M1 infrastructure and that whole line of hardware. Okay, so with a new OS comes, like I said, a lot of catching up for hardware manufacturers. So I've got my MIDI keyboard connected here, which is class compliant, which means there's no drivers required. I've got my Nano Control 2 here, which is also class compliant. Plug them in and they just work. Actually, they work better than they did on Catalina. For a long time, a lot of MIDI hardware needed to be unplugged and plugged back in before it would be recognized by the computer. I don't see that here in Big Sur, so that's really encouraging. But like I said, right at the beginning, I plugged things in and realized, you know what, my audio interface is not going to work because Universal Audio has not updated the software that runs this interface yet. So you're going to run into all sorts of issues like that. So if you're debating whether or not Big Sur is a day one or a day two update for you, look at all of the hardware that you might possibly want to use over the next couple of months. Go to the hardware manufacturer's website and then just see what they are saying. That's true of software as well. If you use Ableton Live, if you use Spectrasonics Omnisphere, if you use Native Instruments Noir or The Giant or any plugin that's a part of your live rig, go to the manufacturer's website and see what they are saying. And I guarantee you right now on day two, as we're shooting this video, they are saying to wait. And that's what we're saying too. Here with Sunday Keys, with Sunday Guitar, with song-specific patches and sound libraries, we think it's wise and prudent to not jump into a big update like this unless you have a really compelling reason to do so. And even then, we always recommend backing up copies of your software by zipping up MainStage, zipping up Logic Pro before you update, and making a full time machine backup of your entire system on an external hard drive before you do something like update to Big Sur, because then you can always restore a previous image of your entire system that includes Catalina or Mojave or something like that. But in general, I think Big Sur is a big deal, no pun intended. I think it's going to end up being a really exciting next 5 years. For a long time, people have been bemoaning that Apple has forgotten about the prosumer, those who rely on Mac and Apple hardware to do pro-level work. There's been all this talk about them just going fully consumer-oriented with lower powered hardware that's just not as robust, that's not as powerful. And I've kind of felt that myself over the last several years. This 2019 MacBook Pro that I bought last year felt like maybe the first real reinvestment in the Pro market, in the MacBook Pro form factor in a long time. And I've got to say now, I feel like the writing is on the wall that we're actually going to see a new level of innovation, or at least a hearkening back to Apple's earlier innovation over the next several years, especially when power users and pro users are concerned. And if you're using your computer for live performance, whether you're a volunteer or you're paid staff at church or you're in a band, I would put you in that pro level of expectation of what you need your computer to be able to do. So I'm really, really excited about this. I'm also very hesitant to say go for it because there's always stuff that just pops up over time. We want to make sure that before your rig is shiny or new, it is reliable. So back up your stuff. Don't update unless you absolutely have to. And if you do, really make sure that you understand all the implications, that you've researched the hardware and software you use to make sure those manufacturers have given the go-ahead. Now, I'm going to hop over here to screen capture, and we're going to poke around MainStage 3.5 a little bit because there are some really cool things in there. You've got the introduction of the new sampler instrument, which replaces EXS24, which is over 10 years old at this point. It's MainStage and Logic Pro's sampler plugin, which is confusing because the new plugin is called Sampler. So I guess that's pretty on the nose. But anyways, EXS24 has been replaced by the new sampler plugin called Sampler, which was added to Logic Pro 10.5 earlier this year. We now see that in MainStage 3.5 as well. It's really cool. There's tons more that you can do inside of Sampler. We've just started to poke around and see what's possible. I've been using it in Logic for a while. Figured it would end up in MainStage eventually. There's all sorts of little other things, little tweaks and optimizations to the way MainStage works. So let's wrap this here, and I'm going to hop over to Screen Cap. We're just going to poke around inside of MainStage 3.5, and I will show you what we are excited about and what's new. Okay, so we are now here inside of MainStage 3.5. We've got Sunday Keys 2021 open. Initially, I noticed the first load is a little bit slower than I'm used to in 3.4 on Mojave or Catalina. And I believe that that probably has to do with the fact that there are some EXS24 instruments automatically being converted to sampler instances here in edit mode. But regardless, things load up just fine. And things sound great. I do notice MainStage 3.4 included a couple different options for how the GUI was drawn. You could use OpenGL, which is an older protocol, or you could draw using Metal, which is what gave everything this weird sort of luminosity. In 3.5, we see that that is now the norm. There's no longer the option to draw using OpenGL, which is fine. But I do notice a little weirdness here. All vertical faders, at least here that we've seen so far, are purple, which is odd. It's the only thing. Like horizontal faders are normal, knobs, buttons, everything else. And you could even see parts of the vertical fader are the intended color, but just this side indication seems to be all purple in 3.5.0. I'm assuming that we'll see that patched out, and that may also depend on the specific model of Mac that you're using. But regardless, things run great. Combining patches using Patch Builder works just fine. The custom instruments and Sunday keys on first glance appear to be maintained really well, and they sound great inside of the new sampler. So that's really cool. So let's really quickly just look inside the new sampler. If you've got Logic Pro 10.5, this will be familiar to you. But if you're just a MainStage user, then this is a big change compared to EXS24, which has been Logic's sampler for over 10 years. Mach 2 was in MainStage 3 the whole time. This is a big update. And the cool thing is that all of the EXS24 instruments in MainStage, whether they're your own or the factory library, they're automatically converted to this new sampler format. Basically, you're able to run any EXS24 instrument inside of sampler. The great thing about this, especially for me as a sound designer, is that it's just a much more dynamic way to program. You can show or hide all the things that you'd want to get to be able to create and edit a sample-based patch. We've got a really great mod matrix here where you can just add or subtract. You've also got now 2 selectable filters here in the synth area, which is really great. You can run those in series or in parallel. So if you're working with synths, lots of cool options to be able to change things up there. And we've also got now all of these modeled filters that were previously added to RetroSynth, and I believe some of these probably also pulled from Alchemy. We now have all of that inside of Sampler as well. So it's really cool to be able to get in here and see all the cool stuff that's available. And even if you just open up the factory library here, there are lots of fun stuff that you can play with. Not a lot of new instruments added here that I'm aware of, at least so far. But to be able to mess with the new mod matrix, the ability to add more envelopes and LFOs, it's really cool stuff. I'm really excited to see that. A lot of the other changes here, according to MainStage's release notes, seem to be stuff under the hood. Stability, reliability, performance, these plugin changes. We've got a few new plugins here. These are all things that have been passed over from Logic. So we've got the new drum synth here, which is interesting. And this is really just one thing at a time here, which is fine. I'm not sure how much practical application drum synth is going to have for us as MainStage users, but it depends on what you're into. We've also got the new quick sampler, which is just for working with one sample at a time. Great for chopping up samples, or if you're working with drums, this is a great option. So that's pretty cool. I thought for a while we might actually see Ultrabeat get replaced, but we did not. Ultrabeat is still here in MainStage 3.5. So obviously they didn't fully program away an update to Ultrabeat, just like they did with EXS24 going over to Sampler. One thing that is a little bit concerning to me here that I will say is that, just to go back to Sampler here, in the past, anytime that Apple has deprecated an instrument, meaning they've just replaced it with something newer and theoretically better, the old legacy plugins have always been available in the plugin selection list by holding down Option and then clicking the drop down. And that reveals this hidden legacy folder here. A lot of these are old MainStage 2 and Logic 9 instruments. And so I was hopeful when I first did this after updating to 3.5 that I would see EXS24 here in the list. Now, obviously, I'm really excited about the new sampler, but I also really wanted the ability to still use just regular old EXS24, maybe in terms of reliability or just familiarity. The fact that it's not here under the legacy options is a bummer to me. It does seem like Apple has done a great job of making sure that Sampler really seamlessly incorporates all the existing EXS24 instruments and is up to the task of handling those, but I still would have loved to have seen it here, and I'm a little bit confused as to why it's not. I would imagine that it has something to do with the fact that a lot of the existing sample engine that runs EXS24 is still there. It's just sort of been repackaged and souped up a little bit to create everything that is Sampler. So it may have just been about the fact that the codebase is so similar that it just didn't make sense, or it would have been exceedingly complicated to double everything up and have a separate area just for that legacy instrument. But Still, with EXS24 Mach 2 having such a long life cycle, to not even have that as an option in MainStage 3.5 does bum me out a little bit. Initially, I haven't run into any areas where I'm like, oh, I really need EXS24. I can do lots more inside of Sampler, but it does concern me when my primary issue or concern in general is performance. It concerns me to not even have that as an option. So that's just one thing I have initially noticed. Now, another thing that they added, which is sort of behind the scenes, but I think is really cool. So we've got this new increase value and decrease value mode for all mappings under range mode. This is something that I think people have actually really wanted for a long time, but maybe not known that they wanted. So what I've got here is I've got this volume fader or knob inside a sampler, and I've got it set to -5. Now I've got range mode set to increase value, and the max range is set to 0. So now when I click this button one time, it increments the value up one amount, which is really cool. And I think that's a feature that people have been wanting for a long time. You could do lots with this, like change transpose one step at a time. So we could go here and make a mapping here, set this to increase value, and then each time we click this button, it's going to increment all the way up. And we could add another button, map it to the same thing, and set it to decrease value. And we'll see how this all shakes out with saved values and whatnot. But now I can actually go down here with this one button, and I can go up here with this other button. Now you can see that the button states are a little wonky right out of the gate, where they're not really accurately reflecting anything at all. So I would probably just turn on momentary behavior, and then you're still going to get weird behavior. So there's lots of little things they've tweaked or changed, and there's some repercussions from those in terms of the graphics that I'd like to see worked out in a 3.5.1. But to be able to increment a value like this is really, really cool. So what we might look at doing over time is actually making it possible to increment drone presets in a future update to Sunday keys or something like that. Then here's this last really interesting thing that we've got as a new option for mappings, where you have this image PDF object option. Theoretically here, you can use backgrounds. You display an image here inside of a background, and then you can actually change up the way that image is displayed in a PDF here, which is pretty cool. Okay, folks, so let us know in the comments if you're excited about all these changes. Are you going to pick up one of the new Macs? Have you already downloaded Big Sur? If you have, I hope you've made a backup. What are you finding inside of MainStage 3.5? Again, it's super easy to back up MainStage. Just right-click on MainStage in Applications and hit Compress, and then you can go ahead and update MainStage, and you'll have the older version still on your system. You just unzip it if you ever need it. Yeah, we're super pumped about it. We want to hear from you what you think. We will be keeping an eye out for these first official benchmark scores for all this new Apple Silicon hardware. We might even do some video content on the new MacBook Air, on the new Mac Mini, and we will be keeping an eye out for hopefully a new 16-inch MacBook Pro sometime this winter, hopefully also featuring the M1 or maybe even a higher evolution of Apple Silicon. I'm really excited to see what Apple has coming up. So thanks for checking out this video and supporting the channel. Let us know how we can help you. If you want to learn more about what we do, there's a link in the description of this video. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.